Welcome to the Black Mirror Podcast.
Join host Ho-Ho as he discusses the riveting Netflix original series,
Black Mirror. Now, here he is, Ho-Ho-Ho.
Welcome to Black Mirror Podcast, and as always, I am your host, Ho-Ho. So how y'all's doing? I hope you're doing good. I really do. Now, spoiler alert, because now we are going to be covering the season finale of Season 4, the episode finale of Season 4, entitled, what was it entitled? Black Museum. Yeah, Black Museum. Now, guys, I'll tell you what. I'm a fan of Black Mirror. I really am. One of the things that makes it unique from other episodic shows out there is, other episodic shows, one episode builds on another, drawing to a conclusion at the season finale, and there you have it. Very typical. Black Mirror doesn't do that because each episode is more or less its own standalone mini movie, if you will. And that's one of the things that makes it really unique. And I've said it before that in some ways, what Black Mirror does, it explores, psyches, it explores, technology, how we interact with each other, how we interact with technology, how we interact with other people through technology, and it's a very interesting, thought-provoking type of a series. And this episode is no different. But this is the first episode that, at least that I can recall, that has ever actually referenced other episodes in the series, and like specifically referenced. I mean, not just kind of seems like, but like a specific reference. And one of which was, San Junipero. I believe that, I have no idea if I'm actually pronouncing that right, but San Junipero back in season 3, actually. Yeah, season 3, episode 4. That was San Junipero, the one where it was a person's consciousness being transferred into a computer in a computer simulated kind of a VR type of a world. Not exactly VR, but that's more or less what it amounts to, And that was the first one that I seen referenced. And it was funny because during the episode of Black Museum, one of the stories that was being discussed in this, the main character of that story, he was reading a comic book that was entitled 15 Million Merits, all the way back from season 1, episode 2. So, the first time in the Black Mirror where they've actually specific references to other episodes. And that was actually kind of unique. But in this one, I had no idea what to expect in, Black Museum. My first initial, thoughts on this was it was going to be just a dark, sinister type of a museum, kind of along the lines of, like Wax Museum, I think was the movie, but it was going to be a bad thing like that. But it ended up being far neater than that, because Black Museum was kind of a history of where we are at so far in Black Mirror, and I thought that was actually really, really neat. Now, if I really looked at some of the stuff that was in, looked at some of the stuff that was in the museum, I'm sure that I would see other references to other episodes in there, and that's going to be something that I intend on doing, because that's just one of them things, looking at Easter eggs, I'm actually kind of curious as to just how many episodes that are referenced in that museum. I'm actually very curious to find out, Now, this one starts off with a gal who is, taking a road trip. She stops at a place along the side of the road. She, parks her car, goes into the trunk, takes out this thing, which is a solar power, to recharge her car. And it's going to take like 3 hours, I think, to recharge the car. And she goes into the museum and starts her journey of learning of the history and the story behind some of the items in this museum, and there's 3 different ones that are, specifically done and specifically talked about in the show. The first one is intriguing, It is, the story starts off where the guy who's leading the tour, isn't just a bystander that, acquired this stuff. He's actually kind of, it's more than that. He started off being a rep of a company that did product, testing and, development and different things like that. And one of the things, and this is going to the first, item that he is explaining to the girl who was going through the museum and taking the tour. And it basically amounts to a neurotransmitter because he's at a hospital, 10th floor, and there's a guy that is a doctor that has a high mortality rate. He's lost a lot of patients. And so he sold this guy on this thing that what it ended up doing is transmitting the sensations that somebody else feels into another person. It takes subject A. I mean, that's not what they intended to do. They tried to transmit the memories and whatnot, but they come to find out, through their, lab testing of lab rats, is that what this item did wasn't transfer memories. It was transfer sensations, to where somebody could feel what somebody else was feeling without actually having the physical damage associated with it. The mental damage, sure. Emotional damage, yes. But the physical damage, no. So you can feel what somebody else is feeling without actually having it happen to you. So you get stabbed, you feel that, but you're not actually getting stabbed. Interesting concept. Sorry, I hit the mic. Sorry. My bad. Interesting concept, And is what they ended up doing and how they ended up using this was, he would go through and would feel all these things from different people. Hey, this person has appendicitis, so, they would put this little net on his head and it would transmit what this person was feeling into the doctor's receiver. And, he could feel what everything felt like, and the success rate on this was amazing because he was able to, catch things that were misdiagnosed and actually, save some people's lives. And it was a neat concept and implied, perfectly, and just a really interesting way of how they ended up doing it. But as what happens all the time is there's a but in this story, Of course, he goes to, the whole misusing of the technology. And this is actually kind of where it lost me, per se, because in this story, the transmitter, the little net thing that goes on the person's head, well, it didn't stay at the hospital. For some reason, the doctor who had the receiver was able to keep this pretty much at all times. And I was, that's the part where it kind of was like, I don't know about this because, you wouldn't think, trial experiment, what have you. I mean, this was something that wasn't necessarily owned by the doctor. I mean, this was more of a hospital thing, but yet he was able to keep it with him and use it at home. And boy, how did he ever use it? But the story takes a twist. As they said in the beginning of the episode, everything in this museum has a dark history, a story behind it. And this one was no different. The guy ended up, it got put on somebody who went into the emergency room and they were trying to diagnose what was wrong with her. And she ended up dying while he was, while she was still hooked up to the, still had the transmitter on her head and he was still hooked up. So, I mean, he went through the sensation of death before he was, brought back to life again, before he was resuscitated. Wow, I had to think about that word for a second. That was great. So he experienced the death, the physical sensation without the physical lasting trauma, And so he felt it, and it changed him. He began to, be hooked on the pain of things. And it drove him and it twisted him to a point to where he was basically removed from the hospital. And then he started, because he was hooked on the sensation of pain, because that's all he's been feeling through this entire thing was putting on, putting that transmitter on onto people whom were feeling pain. And that's what he was now hooked to. Pain was his new drug. And so is what he did. He got punished. He got basically suspended from the hospital because he went bat, crazy is what ended up happening, and they removed him from the hospital. It's like, dude, you got to go. You cannot be here. You cannot do this anymore. I mean, it got insane. And he, excuse me. He ended up starting to cut on himself. He started dishing out pain to himself, but no matter how much damage he did to himself, it wasn't enough because there was a missing element into his fascination with pain, into his addiction to pain, and that was the fear element. Because whenever he's cutting on himself, he's not afraid. There's no fear in that. There's just the sensation of pain. And so he goes out, he finds an unlucky person. I believe he was a homeless guy. That's kind of how they portrayed him. And the guy proceeds to kill him in a very gruesome way. They don't actually show the murder itself, but kills him in a very gruesome way. And lo and behold, a cop is driving past, sees him, and, catches him, and, there you go. But while he was doing this, he basically threw himself into, the same thing happened that happened the first time he was hooked up to somebody that died, and that was he basically died. I mean, it drew him into a comatose state, and it's like, wow, and at the time that the stuff was taking place, not the time frame of the story, but the time frame of the gal listening to the story in the Black Museum, he was still alive. Okay, now that's a story that I don't remember from any of the other Black Mirror episodes. I don't remember that story at all. But the next one, however, I remembered that one. Because the next one was San Junipero from season 3, episode, let me look at it, season 3, episode 4, San Junipero. Now, this one was basically an early rendition, like the first stages of San Junipero, whenever it was still the technology and the usage of said technology was still very much in a, infant stage. It was just starting, just developing. So what happened was, guy and a gal, they're happy, they're together, they have a child together, and, she's taking a picture of, the mom is taking a picture of the dad and their kid. Okay. And she backs up for the shot, for the sake of the shot, she backs up, but unfortunately she backs up a wee bit too far. And apparently the person that was driving said vehicle went, bam, got her. And not dead, got her, but got her to where, again, she was basically in a coma. So what they did in the hospital was they hooked her up to a thing that allowed her to very rudimentary communicate with the people that were talking with her in the room. And by very rudimentary, I mean just that. Like it was, red light, green light, like yes, I like this, and no, I do not. It wasn't anything that was, like really talking, really communicating. It was just a red light, green light. And that's more or less all it amounted to. A small tone and then a light. Yes, I like this idea. No, I do not like this idea. And so the same guy, the scientist rep guy, goes into the room and says, hey, just so happens I have a trial thing that we can do that would be perfect for a person in your predicament. And he's having this discussion with him in the presence of his wife, or at least his girlfriend. I have no idea if they were actually married, but the baby mama. Okay. And he's hesitant, because is what the idea was is we will allow you to, we only use like 30 some odd % of our brain. That's how he starts this off. We only use like 30% ish of our brain. So we've got all this additional space in our brain that is unused. So is what we'll do is we can take her consciousness and put it in your brain. This way, everything you see, she sees. Everything you feel, she feels. Everything you hear, she hears. Now, you're the pilot, but she has, full input into everything of what's going on. You see, she sees. You feel, she feels. You smell, she smells. You taste, she tastes. We can do this. And if she talks to you, it'll be like a voice within your head. You will hear her. And his response was, I got to think about this. Her response was immediate, green light. Let's do this. She was game, just no more questions asked. I don't need to know anything else. Let's do this, So they went ahead and they go about the procedure. Now, again, very rudimentary, very rudimentary. And the thing works without a hitch, without a hitch until it's no longer working out so good. They're driving each other nuts, basically, because here she is, a backseat driver that is experiencing everything about the ride, but has no say in where the ride is going, so she is not happy in this situation at all. Being the backseat driver, she is not happy because one of the things that she does not want him to do is experience his life and live his life away from her, to see other women, to do whatever, because mind you, her consciousness is now in his mind. Her body is clinically dead. Organs donated to science. She doesn't have a body to go back to. It was broken. she has nothing. It's she's now living her life in his head. This doesn't work out for him so well. Again, because he wants to live his life, and she is not happy about the situations. I mean, use your imagination. I'm sure y'all can just, the possibilities on this one. Weird, all right? Weird. So he talks to the doc again, to this rep, which is the same guy, again, that's doing the tour, the tour guide in the Black Museum, same guy. And he's like, hey, I have an issue, I don't like this anymore. This is driving me nuts. And he goes, well, I can understand how you feel about this. So what we can offer you is more control. A pause button. We'll put a pause button on here, which will allow you to pause her to where she's no longer seeing, she's no longer, experiencing the sensations, any of them, and you can no longer hear her. Like there's no talking that you can hear, nothing, nothing at all. We will put her on pause. Okay. So first little tissy between the two, he presses the pause button. And then you come to find out that this is really a pause button in every case of the word of how you might think about it, because, you have pause and screen goes black for her, and then you have unpause, screen comes back up for her, and it's like, okay, cool. So the pause button works. And then you find out that 2 months had passed, but it was instantaneous for her. But 2 months had passed. So, it truly was a pause button for her. For her, it just picked up right where it left off, And finally, more fight ensues, and, there's just more stuff happening and whatnot. And then finally, the doc guy, he offers another alternative and says, hey, look, we have another option, okay? It was, what we can do is, if you no longer want her as a ride along inside your head, what we can do is we can delete the program. Yeah, we can delete her consciousness within your own head. Because at the time, it was considered not a person, not a consciousness, not anything. At the time, it was considered just a program. And you can delete said program at your will, and a program had no more rights than any other program does. This isn't like the Matrix, where programs actually, never mind. Bad reference. But it wasn't treated as a person. No rights, no nothing. And they're like, she's like, absolutely. I want to do this, delete her out of this, out of his head. I don't want any part of this whatsoever. She needs to leave him the hell alone and allow him to move on. And in which case, I understand where she's coming from, and I agree. Now, this isn't the wife that's inside the baby daddy, the baby daddy's head. This is the girlfriend that he has now met and is trying to build a life with. The girlfriend is not happy. But the baby daddy is like, I can't do that. That just, it might not be illegal, but it's not ethical. I just can't do that. I can't do that, So he offers an alternative. Okay. You don't want to delete the program. We have another option. And then he holds up a teddy bear. Yeah, you heard me. A teddy bear. necessarily the same teddy bear from the last one. You know, this teddy bear I think was like a lot bigger, but I mean, if that is a reference to, you know, the other one, then it's a very poor reference that one doesn't have anything to do with the other outside the fact that, you know, teddy bears were in both of them. But anyway, teddy bear. Even still, the reference was for San Junipero, but doesn't matter. Teddy bear. This teddy bear had, you know, the basically the brain box, you know, to where the consciousness could be transferred into it. The bear had a camera, so still that ability to see, and even had, you know, sensory receptacles on it, so the baby could, or I'm sorry, the baby, the consciousness inside the teddy bear could feel what it was feeling, and there was a voice box, not exactly a voice box, but there was a speaker on this, and you know the baby mama, whose consciousness got transferred into this bear, had two options, you know, two buttons that she could press that would allow her to communicate just as rudimentary as the red light, green light. It was smile face and frown face of what she's seen. It was teddy bear loves you as in happy, and then teddy bear needs a hug as in sad. Yeah. Very rudimentary. Time passes. The kid is no longer interested. You know, the kid, because that's what this whole thing was about, you know, was for the mom being able to hold, communicate, hear the whole 9 yards, you know, her son. The kid got sick and tired of the bear, teddy bear, and teddy bear went by the wayside. And I guess by the time it came that they were thinking about destroying the bear, well, consciousness inside items like this now had freedoms, had rights, and a lot more restrictions on, you know, how said technology can be used, as to where she only had 2 emotions that she can communicate with. You know, there was a minimum of 5, and you could not terminate, you could not delete the consciousness because it was considered a real person by then. You know, by the time that, you know, this whole story is taking place inside the Black Museum. And then they go to the main attraction. And this main attraction was basically a person whom was on death row, and that's what this person was. He was a death row inmate. And the guy was like, hey, I want to take your consciousness and basically keep it, kind of like San Junipero. Again, a San Junipero reference on this one. But instead of putting you in a, you know, instead of putting you in a computer and you actually live your life as for all intents and purposes, you, like what happened in San Junipero, you are going to be more or less a hologram in the world. And this story really took a sick twist, because, I mean, he was just, you know, whenever they're looking at him, you know, he goes through the whole, I mean, like, he's just a broken individual. I mean, you're looking at somebody who was just broken, you know, this guy. And then you go through his story of what happened to him. And it was more or less through this interaction where you come to find out who he was and just how sick. Okay, maybe it's unfair to call him sick and twisted, you know, the guy who actually had the Black Museum, but still kind of sick and twisted, you know, because, you know, he put the guy's consciousness in people's minds, and then is what he did, because he was a person who was a convicted felon, got put to death through electrocution, and set up this hologram in such a way that would allow people to shock him, make him experience the pain of electrocution again. It's like, holy crap. Holy crap. But there was safety protocols in this. It was like, we can't do this for more than 15 seconds because this would destroy the program. It would, in essence, kill him. Can't do that. And anything past 10 seconds risks permanent mental harm to him. Basically turning him into a vegetable, even though he's already dead, but his consciousness wouldn't survive that beyond 10 seconds. So, as part of this attraction to wealthy people that could pay the additional money, that's what they ended up doing, was they hooked him up, and they did for over 10 seconds, really pushing that 15-second thing, and it basically just, it tore the guy up, it basically turned him into, for all intents and purposes, a vegetable, And then you come to find out who the girl is. The person who was going through this tour. That it was the inmate's daughter. And she's here not as a trip to go from point A to point B as a tourist. No. She was there for a purpose. To make the person who did this to her dad pay. And boy, howdy, did she ever. She poisoned him. And what she did was she used the technology from the second story, and she took his consciousness and put it in her dad, because it was like, apparently you can, piggyback off of a consciousness in a hologram just as well as you can a consciousness in a person. And so she uploaded him into her dad's brain and put her dad out of misery and forced him to experience the life, afterlife, whatever you want to call it, that she forced on her dad. And then in the process, she also took the teddy bear from that same story. Took that teddy bear and took her teddy bear with her. And then you come to find out that, through the story that she is telling him, after she, like, hey, this is who I am, you come to find out that her mom is dead. And then whenever, like, the thing ends with she's leaving and then she's talking to her mom, hey, did I do a good job? And you come to find out that her mom is doing the ride-along. I mean, it was a neat way that they ended up doing it. I thought it was stinking phenomenal. I really did. I thought it was cool. I really did. I thought it was a neat way that they did it, a neat story, But here you have it, your own creations being used against you, coming back to haunt you, So here's what kind of my takeaway question is for this episode, okay? Elon Musk has already pretty much said, in dealing with AI and technology, the laws and regulations and things of that nature never keep up with the progression of technology. That by the time we realize there's a problem, that the problem is already beyond fixing. And that was what he was talking about in regards to AI. In regards to this kind of stuff, this technology. Do you see some of this stuff as an actual consciousness that should be protected, have rights, what have you? Or do you see it as simply a computer program that you can delete alter, do whatever you want to, just on a whim. You know, intriguing thought exercise in this one, because you see, you see some of the original stories for what the original stories were, but you also see how, the technology progressed before you actually seen the original story, because this one is more or less about San Junipero, and you're seeing where the technology was before you actually watched the episode. I'm like, in a matter of speaking, this one is a sequel, yes, but it's also a prequel, because it talks about and has stories based off of stuff that happened before the actual episodes that they're from. That was confusing even to me, and I knew what I was talking about. Holy crap. I did a horrible job trying to explain that one. Like I said, though, I'm like, very intriguing episode. I like this one. That's just the only way to put it. I like this episode. I thought it was freaking phenomenal. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was awesome. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments if you are on YouTube, or if you are on Spreaker, or even, that's pretty well it. Let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, the best thing you can do is head on over to thehohoshow.com, click on that forum tab, and you'll see the discussion board for season 4, and just put your comments in there on what you thought about the episode. And while you're there, which was your favorite episode in season 4? Of the 6, which one did you like better? Let me know down in the comments. And of course, you can also get a hold of me at thehoho@thehohoshow.com, my email address. So guys, that is all I got for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. So until next time. Thank you for listening to the Black Mirror Podcast. If you would like to join the conversation, you can comment on this episode at Spreaker.com, or go to thehohoshow.com /forum in the discussion board for this season.